Hey everyone, Michelle Hasty Thompson here, coming to you live. And today we're talking about why it is so hard to get off the weight loss roller coaster. Because I know that is not a fun roller coaster. Well, personally, I don't like any roller coaster. They just terrify me and I don't enjoy them at all. And I feel sick and I don't understand why people have fun on them. But most people like roller coasters, and the weight loss one ain't the one they want to be on. So, in order to make this make sense, we have to talk about this idea of conformity. A long time ago, I can't remember when it happened, but there was something called the Asch experiment. And if you haven't heard about this experiment, what happened was they took a group of people and they showed them lengths of lines and they said, which ones are the same. Like there was one over here, and then they had like A, B, C, D, E to choose from to match the one over here. And like we're talking about lengths of lines. Like it's not challenging. It's very obvious what the answer is. And so what they did is they hired actors. And so the first three people all chose the wrong length line as the correct answer because you said it out loud. Then when it got to the fourth, fifth, sixth person, these were actual participants, not actors. And they wanted to see, would these people give the right answer, or would they conform to what the first three people said in order to, like fit in or be alike? And what they found was more often than not, people would give the wrong answer. And when they interviewed them later and said, look, you knew which line length was correct because it was blatantly obvious. So why did you give the wrong answer? Why did you give the answer of the three people in front of you knowing the answer was wrong? And they said a lot of different things, but they basically said things like, well, I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I figured maybe I was missing some information and then they had to be right. Like they literally second guessed themselves because someone else in front of them gave a different answer, or they knew they were right and the other people were wrong and they still went with it. Now you might be thinking, I wouldn't do that. It doesn't matter if you would do that in that experiment or not. At the end of the day, conformity happens. Now why it happens is why it's important for us in terms of weight loss, because when it comes to conformity, what's happening is there's two very different concepts that sound the same that get in the way. And those two things are fitting in and belonging. Now, have you ever heard Brene Brown talk? She talks about this a lot and she's brilliant at it. So I'm just going to give a brief talk about it in terms of weight loss because she really is the master at it. And if you haven't seen Brene Brown talk or read her books, she's absolutely brilliant. So definitely go check her out. It's Brene Brown, Brene Brown. Anyways, getting back to this. So when it comes to fitting in and belonging, these are very different concepts. Fitting in is what someone does to conform. It's what they do so that they can fit in with this other group. So I can remember in middle school being, my whole existence was about fitting in. And at 11, 12, 13, you may not really know who you are, so you may not realize that you're conforming yourself to belong with the group because it's all about your peers at that time and fitting in with your peers, and that's kind of survival at that age. And so what I would do is whatever the cool people or the people who seemed like the people you should fit in with, whatever they did, I wanted to do. And so I remember at a young age being like, well, I remember it was Doc Martens. Everyone had Doc Martens. Now these are expensive shoes. And yet I had to have these Doc Martens because if I didn't, I felt like I didn't fit in. And that was like suicide to me. It's like death. Of course, my parents couldn't afford Doc Martens. I never got them. And that was really hard for me. And it just got harder and harder to keep up with these people. And that's what fitting in feels like. So in the weight example, it might feel like I've got to fit in with what the media says is beautiful, right? As an example. And so that looks like this one specific type of body, and I have to have that body. Or it goes the other way. You might have a group of people who diet and who are that talk about their food, their weight, and all this stuff. And then you might feel like, well, if I don't do that stuff, then I'm not going to fit in with them. Like if all of my friends are talking about the diet they're on and all of a sudden I walk in and say, oh, I don't do the dieting thing anymore, you might not feel like you fit in with them anymore. Okay. Now belonging, and real quick, if you like what you're hearing and you want more, just go to speakwithmichelle.com. I will personally have a conversation with you about what's going on with you and your body and food and weight, and find out more about that. And it's totally free at speakwithmichelle.com. Okay, belonging. So belonging is different. Belonging it's when you're with people and it's completely effortless. It's the people that you can have a dirty house, You don't have to impress them. You don't have to put your makeup on or do your hair. You don't have to do anything. You just belong with them. It's completely natural and easy. No matter what you say or do, you belong with these people. And when you find those people, you know how it feels. It feels different than when you're trying to fit in with a group of people, okay? Now, the reason why this comes back to this experiment and conformity is because conformity is a lot of times how we survive, and giving a really kind of awful example is back in terms of the Holocaust, right? Like if you didn't fall in line with what Hitler was saying, that's a pretty big deal. You could be killed. You probably would be killed. And so you had to conform. And a lot of people, when they interview people from that time who killed the Jews, they're like, these are my neighbors. These are my friends. I didn't want to kill them, but I didn't want to die either. So I felt like I had to conform. Extreme example, I understand. But it's just trying to get you to understand how this idea of conformity works and how it influences us. So we live in this society where, it is totally normal to hate your body. It's totally normal to talk about dieting all the time. It's totally normal to be in this angst with weight and food. Like that is the norm. So if you walk up to a group of people and they're like, my body this, my role this, I'm on this diet, I'm doing this thing. And you're like, I kind of like my body. I think it's fine. Especially if your body isn't what the media says is fine. So if you do have a role, or if you do have something that the rest of the world would say isn't perfect or ideal, then it's like, whoa, don't say that, right? So as a conformity exercise, we tend to just kind of go with what everyone's saying or stay quiet. So if everyone's like, yeah, I hate my body, I wish it were different, I'm trying to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking, well, I don't really want to hate my body. Like that doesn't feel good. And I don't want to make them uncomfortable and say like, I don't hate my body. I think it's actually okay. Like it's this weird situation where you don't naturally feel like it's comfortable to say those things. And so we conform to this idea of just having this body and not being okay with it, wanting to change it all the time. That's the normal. That's what people do. And so this is why it's so hard to get off this weight loss roller coaster, because you're going to have to be different than everybody else. And then you're like, crap, like if I'm different than everyone else, like, am I still going to fit in? Am I still going to be able to hang out with my dieting friends? Am I still going to belong with my family who struggles with weight if I don't struggle with weight? Or if all of a sudden I walk in and I don't count my calories anymore. I don't look at what I'm eating anymore. I just live my life free from this, but everybody around me doesn't. Now all of a sudden you're an outcast. I know I've lived that way for a long time in this sort of weight loss world. So it becomes really challenging to get off the roller coaster, because you're going to be all by yourself on an island for a while until you find other people who are like, yeah, I don't know, I don't do this body hate thing anymore. And you're like, there's more of us? Like, this is awesome. So this is why we have to do it. Real quick, if you like what you're hearing, you want more, jump over to speakwithmichelle.com. I'll talk to you personally about what's going on with your life, your food, your weight, and we'll talk about how we can fix that. So it becomes really challenging because there is this chance of not fitting in, specifically with your group. Now, what's really painful too, if you come from a family that you don't naturally belong with, and this does happen, it's hard. So if you come with a family and you feel different than them, or they operate different than you, and whether you're conscious of it or not, let's say you've done something to try to fit in with your family and it just isn't there, that's really hard, especially as a child, to have this feeling of like, I just don't feel like I really belong with these people, and I was born from them, like I'm blood related to them. And so we will struggle with this feeling of not feeling like we belong with our own family. And that could be really painful. And that could cause a lot of issues and dysfunction with weight and food. And then, like I said, on the other side, you might have groups of people who you feel like, these people I just belong with. I can just be me. Like if I just woke up one day and said, you know what, guys, I am done with this weight loss thing. I am done with this dieting thing. Like, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, cool if you want to, but like, I'm not doing it. And they were like, that's awesome. Like, we support you. No problem. But then if you have the other people who you don't quite have that relationship with, and you come up to them and say, I found this girl, Michelle, she's kind of crazy, but she says that we don't have to do this whole rat race of the weight loss stuff. And she kind of has these other ideas, and these people might feel insecure when you say that. It might make them feel uncomfortable because they've got this model of the world where they diet and they've got it, this is what they do, and then all of a sudden you come in and say, hey, maybe that's not what we do, and they're like, they might come down on you for that. And it's not because they're trying to be mean or malicious, it's because something's made them uncomfortable, so they're kind of defending their feelings, and then all of a sudden they shoot you down and you start to feel like, oh God, why did I even say that? Why was I even trying to get off this roller coaster? Of course I have to diet, of course I have to count my calories, what was I thinking? And then because it's new and vulnerable, it becomes a really toxic situation. And we don't want that, because when you're trying to make these major changes and trying to get off the weight loss roller coaster, it's going to feel a little isolated for a while, like I said, until you find those people who are in that same island, if you will, who really don't want to think this way anymore, who don't want to follow the media trends, who don't want to follow the dieting trends, who want to exit this world permanently. And if you feel that way, you're probably not alone in feeling that way, but if you actually do it, you're the minority right now. Hopefully that changes, but it is right now. And so we have to understand how this conformity thing works, how fitting in and belonging work, because a lot of the times it's what's stopping us from following what's intuitive to us. Like a lot of times when I'm telling people, here's what you got to do, X, Y, Z, and they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, because intuitively you've probably had those thoughts and feelings, but when nobody backs it up, you feel a little crazy. So you're like, well, that can't be it. It can't be that my focus shouldn't be on food and exercise. It should be on my creativity, or it should be on my fulfilling my dreams, or whatever it is that you've kind of just randomly had a thought, like, this doesn't seem like where my attention should go. I feel like I should be over here looking at this stuff, which is more fulfilling, more that feels better than focusing on how many carbs I ate today. Like when you have those random intuitive thoughts, if nobody's backing it up, and worse, everybody's saying the antithesis, you feel a little crazy. I felt crazy, I know that. I still feel a little crazy. No, I'm just kidding. I have the research now to back up what I'm thinking, so it's not as crazy, but I get it. I get it. And there are people that you will naturally belong with who don't body shame, who don't pick and prod, who don't diet, who live in a world where they're like, you know what? My body may not be perfect, but it's my body and I appreciate it. And I'm working on myself every day. I am not here to say I'm perfect, but I also know that I'm not going to beat myself up while I'm trying to achieve what I really want. Those people exist. They're out there. And we want to find those people that you just naturally can belong with in that way. And also stop trying to fit in where it's just not going to happen. Now, I see this a lot with weight because, unfortunately, when we struggle with weight, especially as a child or when we're younger in adolescence, if you're struggling with weight, let's be honest, it's hard to fit in. It just is. So when in our adolescence, when we're struggling with weight, we don't feel like we necessarily fit in. And then there's like, now we're adults potentially walking around still trying to fit in. And it's like crazy because we might not consciously be aware that that's what we're doing, but it's all this childhood stuff, this adolescent stuff just kind of bubbling up as adults and showing its ugly head. And then we're like, we feel really irrational and silly about it. And it does happen. Once again, if you like what you're hearing, speakwithmichelle.com. I'll talk to you personally about what's going on in your life and your body and your food, and we'll get that fixed. So if you have this adolescent stuff showing up and as an adult and you're still finding like, God, I'm wanting to fit in. It's crazy. Like I'm an adult. I don't need to fit in anymore. Like I've got my own life. I've got my own people. Why am I trying to fit in these other groups where I just don't naturally belong? And that's because it's painful. It's painful to not belong in places. And we want to belong everywhere. And we can't belong everywhere. Like I'm not going to belong in every group, and you're not going to belong in every group, and that's good, because where you do naturally belong, it's easy, it's effortless, and that's where you want to be. And when you find that, just stop going into the other avenues. And that might mean that what everyone in the media, what everyone in the world portrays as ideal, you might not fit in with that group of people. And I don't mean because you don't look like them or anything like that. I just mean because it might be a personality clash. And I've heard this from clients where they'll say, you know, my neighbor was outside and I've always perceived her as being perfect because she's got this awesome body. Like she's just fit and she's thin. And I just look at her in the morning and I think, damn, like she's got it going on, right? She's like, and then I heard her outside fighting with her husband. And it's like, I had that moment of like, oh my God, like, why would I assume her life is perfect just because she's thin? Like, she's got her own stuff going on. And it's not to be mean about the fact that she was fighting with her husband, but she had that thought, like, I have a really great marriage. And it's not to say that anything wrong with her, but like, nobody's perfect. Just because she's thin, just because she's fit, doesn't mean she has a perfect life. So we start to have this understanding about ourselves that, like, I don't need to fit in everywhere. And just because, even if I were thin, even if I were ideal in the media's eyes, I still wouldn't fit in everywhere. So if you're doing it for those reasons, consciously or subconsciously, you will find yourself in a pretty hard spot. Instead, jump off the roller coaster, go find an island all by yourself where you operate the way you want to operate, and then notice who joins you on that island. And there will be people, even if it feels a little lonely for a moment. What you'll find is there are people in the world who don't want to live in the rat race of the dieting and weight loss nonsense, okay? It's not the way we were meant to live our lives. We were not born to focus on our weight. We were not born to counter every calorie. And you get to live a life where you don't have to do that. All right, more lives coming to you throughout the month, but that's it for today. If you like what you heard, you want more, go to speakwithmichelle.com. I'll find out more about what's going on with your food, with your weight. We'll get it fixed, and it's totally free for you. I just want to find out, what's your story? What's going on with you? So speakwithmichelle.com. Until next time, see you guys later.